Hello, I'm Alice. I've been playing Star Wars Galaxies off and on since the early days and providing support professionally for over 2 decades. In the first part of this introduction, we briefly covered how the history of Star Wars Galaxies led to vastly different servers in multiple eras and went over registration, installation, some tools you may find helpful, and character creation. This time, we'll demonstrate a few basics you'll need to know and give some tips you may find helpful, including where to start the quest that unlocks your 3rd character slot. When you start out, you're going to get this quest from Han Solo. Once you complete this quest, you'll get a free speeder. Also, this opens up a quest line called Legacy, and this is a really good place to start out in the game. Okay, so the first thing we want to go over here is just basic interaction. So if we say go up to this mission terminal, notice when I put my mouse on this mission terminal, there's little green markers around the corners of the terminal. That indicates that that is the item that I have my mouse hovered on. That's not my active target, though. To make it an active target, you just left-click on it, and now we have blue markers and green markers. If I move my mouse away, the green marker goes away, but it's still my active target, so the blue markers are still there. But while that's my active target, I can press the tilde key, which is just to the left of the number 1, a little curly dash-looking thing. It doesn't matter where my mouse cursor is when I press it, because that's my active target. I'm going to get the menu for that terminal. Alternatively, you can right-click on the terminal after you've made it your active target and get to the missions that way as well. There is an on-screen map. If you press the letter M, this will show you anything that's nearby. At the moment, we see buildings, but if you were out in the wilderness, you would likely see enemies showing up with little red or yellow markers. And when you get approaching someone's house or something, those will start to show up as well. Navigation in this game is heavily centered around the idea of a waypoint. So if we look at the compass in the top right, there's a couple little blue arrows here. When you put your mouse on it, you can see the name of the waypoint and how far away it is. If you want to be able to tell which of these waypoints is which at a glance, without actually needing to putting your mouse up there, you have a couple of options. If you open your data pad, by default, the letter K, under the Waypoints tab, there's a link that says activate a single waypoint at a time. If you turn this on, then you'll only get one of these showing up. And then when you want to switch the waypoint, you just come in here and activate the other one. Another alternative that you have available to you is the on-screen waypoint monitor. If you go to settings with the little wrench and interface, and then scroll down, there's an option for that on-screen waypoint monitor. Once you turn that on, you get this little window that has an entry for each waypoint that you have active. Now, if you activate a lot of waypoints, this could get really big, so you may still have to deactivate some waypoints from time to time. Otherwise, your whole screen is going to be covered by this. Now, as far as new waypoints, the easiest thing to start off with is probably going to be to use the Planetery map. So if you just hit V by default to get to the Planetery map, or it's this little world icon down here. Let's say we want the waypoint to the garage, which you're going to want to go to fix your bike before it gets to 0 hit points. Otherwise, you got to get a new one. And we're in the city of Mos Eisley, so if I select that garage waypoint and right-click, you can create it. That's going to create in your data pad a waypoint that just has the name of the city. Now, other buildings that you make waypoints for are going to get named the same. So in order to distinguish between them, I recommend you rename this. We'll just call it Garage. And it did not get activated by default, so now I'll activate it. Another way to create waypoints is you can just make one for where you're currently standing. If you type /waypoint, and then you can do it like this, but then it'll be called waypoint. So if you just type the name, my name, Now I've got a new waypoint for where I'm currently standing called my name. Okay, that's enough for basic navigation. There's a few settings that you may want to consider looking at. We'll go through those now. If we go back to interface under settings, there is an option that's called secondary target status window. Your status window is this little window in the upper left that shows the red, green, and blue health bars, which are my stats. When you have a target selected, like an enemy or another player, you'll have another window just like this for them. You can also have a third one of those status windows. And if you change this setting to target of target, that third window will be whatever your target has targeted. So if you're in battle, for example, you can use this to figure out which enemy your buddy is targeting or who the enemy is targeting. Another setting under controls is mouse dead zone in pre-CU. This was being used, and it's also popular in FPS games. Basically, if you just drag this to the right, you'll see that little green square. That's your mouse dead zone. Basically, that's just an area where when you move your mouse, you have to move your mouse outside of that zone before the game or your character will interact. Another one is under chat. There's an option to add more verbose combat messages. This can be helpful because you'll be able to get information such as which weapons and abilities that other people are using. And then under graphics, there's just a couple things that I want to point out there. If we scroll down, there's an option for offset camera. This is an NGE thing. It's on by default. But if we turn this off, then you can adjust the height of the camera and customize it to wherever you want. And then there's a lot of things you can change about the graphics. Some of these will increase the quality a little bit. But note, shadows do exist, but they're off by default. So if you want those, just turn those on. And shadow is something that can be performance intensive, so just keep that in mind. Okay, and then the last thing that I wanted to show you under settings is the key map. So under key map, I'm using the default key map Star Wars Galaxies. There's a classic one if you prefer the way it worked in pre-CU, and a slightly more modern one if you want to use that one instead. There's a couple settings here that some people may want to adjust. One setting you might want to change is the chase mode. When chase mode is turned on, if you use your turn keys, which by default is A and D, it rotates with the camera staying behind you. But if you turn chase camera mode off, when you use the turn keys, your character just spins around like this. If you plan to use chase camera mode turned off, you may also want to uncheck disable strafing with turn keys. With both chase camera mode and disable strafe with turn keys disabled, when you use your turn key, your character moves sideways. You can already do this with the Q and E keys by default, by the way. This game also lets you copy and paste text, but there's no keys mapped to that by default. So go to Key Map, Chat. In Windows, copy is normally Control-C, cut, Control-X, paste, Control-V as in Victor. And depending on which key map you selected, those could already be in use, especially if you chose Star Wars Galaxies Classic. With those mapped, I can go to my browser, copy some text, and paste it into a new in-game mail. Also note, all these settings we've been customizing must be set individually on each of your characters. One other setting under key map that you may want to change is momentary run/walk toggle. Note that it defaults to shift as one of the keys you can press for this. That is also used in accessing or executing one of the skills on this bottom row. If you press shift and then the number whichever number for this row item, that executes the skill on this bottom row. So if you're using your keyboard to execute these skills rather than your mouse, you may find this annoying. So you can come in here and remap this to something else if that ends up being the case for you. So another thing that is included in this game from NGE is the Chronicles profession. This is something that allows you to create your own quest. And in order to do that, you have to level up the profession, and that requires collecting a lot of these Chronicle relics. Now, pretty much everything you do, like crafting and combat, gives you these Chronicle loot. And this can fill up your inventory really, really fast. You need a lot of them, so it's helpful if you're actually using that profession. But otherwise, it just gets kind of in the way. The only thing you can do with them is sell them once you get a whole bunch of them, if you're not actually using them for yourself. So there's an option to turn those off so you don't get that loot. To do that, you want to go to the ability screen. That's this weird little orange icon at the bottom, or semicolon by default. And then under Other, there's a setting that says Chronicles Loot Toggle. Just click on that and disable loot. Now, when you're in a group, you will still get this Chronicle loot, even if you turn this off, as long as even one player has it turned on. Now, you can log in 2 characters at once. To do that, you just have to launch open the launcher again, and then you can log into another character. So I'll do that now. In your SWG Restoration folder, there's a few config files. This client config one, for example, if you look at the top of it, it'll tell you don't edit this file, and it'll tell you if you want to customize your client settings, that instead you should create a file called user config. So that is what you would do in the same location that this client config is. You'd create a file called user.cfg and put in whatever custom settings that you want to use. Now, if you want to get a list of what those are, I'm not going to go over them, but you can just Google SWG user.cfg and you'll get a big list of options. So to launch the client a second time, so you can be in 2 characters, you can just click on this restoration exe file, or you probably have a shortcut on your desktop you could have clicked instead. And now we just hit play on the launcher again. I'll just move this over so we can see both at the same time. I'll log into the top character. So there's a couple of options that we have available for travel in Star Wars Galaxies. If you open your data pad, again, K by default, one option is a speeder. So you can, of course, travel this. Of course, you can walk like I've been doing on the other character. You also can get animal mounts. You'll need a creature handler or a bioengineer to make it for you. But as an example, here's one of my writable mounts. Some of them are faster than others. And then as far as travel between planets or even between starports and shuttleports, there's a couple of options there. You can go to these ticket terminals and buy a ticket. Now notice these little green lines between the planets. When you're buying a ticket, you can only get a ticket between 2 planets. So for example, I'm on Naboo at the moment. So I can get a ticket to Corellia because there's a green line directly from Naboo to Corellia, but I can't get a ticket to Talos because that requires me to go to Corellia first. And I also couldn't get a ticket to Mustafar because there's no direct line from Naboo to Mustafar. Now, if you have a ship, you can also travel for free between any starport on any planet, and you can go there directly. You don't have to do multiple hops like you do with the tickets. If you continue that quest line I mentioned at the beginning that Han Solo gives you, at some point, one of the NPCs that you talk to will tell you where the pilot trainer is, and regardless of which faction pilot trainer you go to, you can get a free ship from them. You'll also get the waypoint to those on the wiki. I'll put a link to that in the description for you. But let's say we want to go to Talos and Nashel, because that's where you go to unlock your third character slot, and we'll travel there. And now we just got to walk out of the starport. So I'm just going to delete this waypoint because I'm going to need to get to the cloning center, and it's going to create a waypoint with the same name as that. So if you open the Planetary map, V, or this little world icon here, expand cloning center, and I'm at Nashel, create a waypoint. Now we have a new waypoint that's called Nashel that I just created. And I'll just get on my speeder. Now we can drive over to that location. So you walk in here and go to the right. And if you go to the bottom of the basement here, there's going to be a guy standing down here. This guy will give you the quest to unlock your third character slot. This quest gives you an item that's part of a collection. Collections give a reward once you complete the collection. In this case, the collection reward is a third character slot. So if we go to this collections button here, under artifacts, you won't see this collection until you get one of these items, but it's Ritta's collection, and all of these are part of that quest, but some of them are more rare than others. Also note that quest is timed. All right, and then the last thing that I wanted to mention is this game supports the use of macros, which is useful if you need to run the same command multiple times. For example, if you are an entertainer, there's a whole bunch of flourish skills that you have to use while you're dancing or playing music, and having to manually execute those every single time would be kind of annoying. So you can set up a macro to do that instead. I don't have any macros set up right now, but you would create them here if you wanted to use one. Just note that in Star Wars Galaxies Restoration, macros are automatically dumped. So if you have a macro running in a loop, after some period of time, that macro will stop running and you'll have to start it again. This is because macros were not intended to allow people to play while away from the keyboard. And that is the strategy they're using to help combat that. Now, there are some exceptions to this rule that allows entertainers and doctors to be able to automatically buff people. And so there's a list of commands that are allowed. And I'll put a link on where you can get information on that as well. But if you're using only these allowed commands, then you will not get your macro dumped. If you want to see how long it's going to be until it gets dumped again, press Control-Shift-G, and you'll see that on this screen here, where it says seconds until macro dumped. And I think that'll do it for today.